start most of my days listening to an assortment of news programs and podcasts, news-related podcasts. And today I listened to NPR Politics. Now, I know NPR is very liberal. NPR is very Democrat, it's very liberal. Not to say leftist, but very liberal. And they're talking about the economy in the United States right now. Let me just play it here.
You know, in many ways, the economy is very good right now in one high-profile way, and that is inflation. The economy is very bad right now, but polls show Americans are mostly focused on the negative, and that they're giving President Biden bad marks for how he's handling the economy.
The economy in the United States is terrible, and they're acting like, I don't know why the Americans are just like focusing on the negative, you know? Like, why can't you just focus on the positive, you know? What positive? Unless you're one of the millionaires or someone who's invested in the stock market, which is like no average Americans, the economy is in a terrible, terrible situation.
There is a lot to be happy about right now, isn't there?
Well, there is, but people aren't very happy. We just got some new data from the University of Michigan showing consumer sentiment has fallen to a decade low.
No kidding.
And that's despite some things to be happy about. You know, we had a really strong job growth last year, more than 6.5 million jobs added. Unemployment has now fallen to 4%.
Okay. Jobs added. What you mean to say is 6 million jobs regained, not added. You know, these were jobs that were lost and now have been added. Regained, in other words, recovered. 6 million jobs recovered. And then they're talking about unemployment as 4%. But that depends on how you define unemployment. According to the Department of Labor statistics, unemployment means that you have no form of income through work at all. If you have any sort of work at all, then you are not regarded as unemployed, even if that work doesn't even allow you to buy food and rent. Consider the fact that the largest demographic of homeless people in the United States today right now is not, sort of ambling around mentally ill, drunk people. It's working families, homeless working families, people with jobs and children whose jobs do not provide them sufficient income to even put a roof over their heads. Now, those people are considered employed. But if you are looking at unemployment in terms of people who have sufficient work to meet their needs, to have even remotely close to a living wage, then the unemployment rate in the United States today is on par with what it was during the Great Depression, which is about a quarter of the population. Almost 25% of the United States workers today are actually unemployed, functionally unemployed, meaning they may as well be unemployed because their employment is so useless to them in terms of subsistence that they would be better off just being on welfare. But those people are considered employed because they have some form of job that provides them some form of income, but functionally they're unemployed. I mean, this is the important thing to understand about unemployment. The government doesn't really control jobs and job creation. That's not really something that the government can do. But what the government can do is control unemployment statistics.
Economic growth last year was the fastest since Ronald Reagan was in the White House. But
now, what does economic growth mean? GDP. Most of GDP last year was derived from corporations hoarding wealth that they received from bailouts. That's included as GDP because it's included as profit for these companies, even though it was not profit derived from revenue, it's profit derived from bailouts from the federal government. That's the economic growth that they're talking about, not actual economic growth as any normal person would understand it.
Scott, I would say we have not seen inflation this high in our lifetimes, and you hear this from economists, you hear this from Democratic pollsters and analysts. Nothing I heard from.
They're identifying that inflation is real, and that the drastic level of inflation is more than any of us have seen in our lifetime, unless you're as old as me, and you can remember Reagan, and you can remember the inflation rate at that time. So they are acknowledging that this is a real thing that exists. It's a real thing that's happening in the U.S. economy is inflation. A drastic level of inflation, which means that not only are people not able to have jobs that provide a sufficient income, but whatever income they have is not going as far as it would normally go because prices are high on everything.
Inflation just hits people more viscerally.
It hits them more viscerally.
People see it when they go to the gas pump, and it's different than other economic metrics.
You think? I mean, it hits them more viscerally. It's all a matter of sentiment. It's how you feel about it. It's not the fact that it is a real thing that makes it difficult to survive financially. It makes it impossible to survive financially. It's hitting you viscerally. No. It's literally knocking the wind out of you financially to where you can't even continue to exist and subsist and provide for your family and even keep a roof over your head.
I think that more inflation, it is something that people viscerally react to. And I heard this from a Democratic pollster I talked to. She says that, time and again in her focus groups and polls, she hears from voters who just feel like wages are not keeping up with the rising cost of living. And maybe that's psychologically because you get a paycheck twice a month, but you buy something that's more expensive every day.
Psychologically, people feel that their wages aren't going as far as they used to. That's a feeling people have. It's reality. So what they're saying is that it's not so much that the reality is horrific and unbearable. It's that people realize that and feel a certain way about it, feel negatively about the fact that their lives are miserable. That's the problem. It's not the problem isn't that their lives are miserable. The problem is that they feel that misery and express it in polls. So that's all I wanted to say, really. I just wanted to share that with you. As I'm listening to this podcast, I'm seeing how the liberal media, and I need to differentiate that from leftist media, because the left historically has cared about workers and the poor. The liberals do not care about workers and the poor at all, and that's seen very clearly from the response of the Canadian government to the truckers' protest. They don't care about workers. They don't care about labor. They don't care about the poor. They don't care about the working class. They don't care about the underclass. They don't care about the homeless. That's the liberals. Leftists historically have. That's why you have to distinguish. You can't actually just say liberal or leftist as if they're synonymous, because they're not. They're not interchangeable terms. The liberal media, like NPR, the liberal media is concerned not about the misery that people are suffering in real life, but about the fact that they might feel something negative about that misery and blame the Biden administration for that, and that might be reflected in voting. So listen to the words that they say, because it really reveals a lot about what their priorities are and how the extent to which they have really contempt for their own population. Jazakumullahu khairan wa assalamu alaikum.